On November 26, 1926, inside the FN factory at Herstal, Belgium, John Moses Browning collapsed at his workbench. He was 71 years old. In front of him lay an unfinished pistol, roughly half complete. It carried a 13-round magazine at a time when most military sidearms held 7 or 8. It was lighter than many of its contemporaries. Its internal system promised mechanical simplicity and manufacturing efficiency. If completed properly, it would redefine what a service pistol could be. But Browning kept much of the design in his head. 14 years later, German tanks rolled into Belgium. The FN factory fell intact. Among the machinery and tooling sat the completed version of Browning's last pistol, now called the High Power. The occupying Germans immediately resumed production for their own forces. Over the next 4 years, more than 300,000 would be manufactured under occupation. At the same time, in Britain, the Belgian engineer who had completed Browning's design was working frantically to recreate production drawings from memory, so the Allies could manufacture their own. This is the documented story of how an unfinished American design became one of the most influential combat pistols of the 20th century, how it armed opposing sides of the same war, and why British special forces embraced it while much of the regular army held onto revolvers. The French requirement that started everything. The chain of events began in 1921 when the French military issued a specification for a new service pistol. Their demands were ambitious. Minimum capacity, 10 rounds, caliber, 9mm or larger, effective range, 50 meters, weight, under 1 kilogram. At the time, no pistol in the world fully met those requirements. The Colt M 1911 held 7 rounds. The Luger P08 held 8. The British Webley revolver held 6. In practical terms, that difference mattered. A British officer with a 6-shot revolver faced a German opponent with 8 rounds. If both emptied their weapons, the German had a 1/3 advantage in available fire before reloading. The French wanted something beyond that, a pistol offering dramatically greater sustained firepower. No existing design could deliver it. A new start in Utah and Belgium. Browning, working from Ogden, Utah, saw opportunity. He had previously designed the 1911 for Colt, but those patents were no longer under his control. He could not simply replicate his earlier work. He needed something entirely new. The breakthrough came from his colleague at FN, Belgian engineer Dieudonné Sive. Sive developed a double-stack magazine, rounds staggered in 2 columns that merged into one at the feed lips. Today, that seems obvious. In the early 1920s, it was revolutionary. A single-column 9mm magazine typically held 7 or 8 rounds within a grip of manageable size. Sive's staggered system fit 13 rounds into a grip only slightly wider. The mathematics were elegant. The effect was decisive. The pistol weighed roughly 900 grams unloaded, under the French limit. Overall length was approximately 200 millimeters. Typical muzzle velocity for 9mm ammunition was in the mid-300 meters per second range. On paper, it satisfied or exceeded the French specification. Browning filed a patent on June 28, 1923, and constructed prototypes. Over the next 3 years, he traveled repeatedly to Belgium, refining feeding reliability and trigger geometry. He never saw the finished product. Completion after death. After Browning's death in 1926, Sive continued development for 8 more years. When key 1911 patents expired in 1928, he incorporated certain elements Browning had previously used. Most importantly, he replaced the swinging barrel link with a shaped cam track, simpler, cheaper to manufacture, and reliable in service. The final design was ready by 1934. FN designated it the P35. Production began in 1935. Then came irony. France rejected it. Instead, they selected their domestic model, 1935A series, the pistol built to French specifications, would not serve in the French army. FN marketed it as the Browning High Power. The name referred to magazine capacity, not ballistic strength. By May 1940, approximately 56,000 had been produced, primarily for Belgium and China. Then, Germany invaded. Occupation and dual production. Germany invaded Belgium on May 10, 1940. Within 2 days, the FN factory was captured intact. German administrators quickly resumed production. The pistol received the designation Pistolet 640B, the B indicating Belgian origin. These pistols were frequently issued to Waffen-SS units and paratroopers rather than standard infantry formations. Between 1940 and 1944, roughly 300,000 high powers were manufactured under occupation. Quality declined as wartime pressures intensified. Some late war examples omitted the magazine disconnect safety to simplify production. There are accounts suggesting sabotage through improper heat treatment by Belgian workers, though primary documentation remains limited. The strangest consequence appeared during Operation Market Garden in September 1944. At Arnhem, British paratroopers faced Waffen-SS forces across the bridge. Anecdotal accounts suggest both sides may have carried high powers manufactured in the same Belgian factory. Same design, same caliber, same 13-round capacity, opposing each other across a Dutch river. Escape and reconstruction. In 1941, Sive escaped occupied Belgium with assistance from the resistance. He traveled through Vichy, France, into Spain, onward to Portugal, and finally by ship to Britain. He did not carry complete blueprints. Some drawings remained hidden in Belgium, others existed only in his memory. At the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield, Sive began reconstructing production drawings from partial documentation, surviving pistols, and recollection. It was painstaking industrial reverse engineering, performed by the man who had designed it. By mid-1943, Britain had finalized modified drawings, but domestic factories were fully committed, producing rifles, Bren guns, and Sten submachine guns. There was no spare capacity. Canadian manufacturing. The solution came from Canada. The John Inglis Company of Toronto had already secured Bren gun contracts and possessed the machinery and skilled labor necessary for precision production. In April 1943, China requested 180,000 high powers under Canadian mutual aid. These were to include tangent sights graduated to 500 meters and stock slots similar to the Mauser C-96. Production began in February 1944. 2 main variants were produced. Number 1, Mark I with tangent sights, Chinese contract. Number 2, Mark I with fixed sights and simplified finish, Commonwealth issue. The Chinese contract collapsed in September 1944 after only about 4,000 pistols were delivered. The remainder were redirected to Commonwealth forces. By October 1945, Inglis had produced approximately 151,816 pistols. The French resistance. Question. The claim that the high power was the most requested weapon of the French resistance does not stand firmly on documented evidence. British Special Operations Executive, SOE, records show that in June 1944 alone, nearly 10,000 Sten guns and millions of rounds of ammunition were dropped into France, along with thousands of rifles and carbines. Pistols were a small fraction of total supply. The high power was among several types distributed. Evidence confirms SOE agents and Jedburgh teams carried Webley revolvers, Enfield revolvers, and Inglis high powers, depending on availability and preference. The Sten gun, not the pistol, became most associated with the Macchi. The narrative of overwhelming resistance demand for this specific pistol appears largely rooted in later enthusiast exaggeration. Why it mattered to special operations. For clandestine operatives, however, the high power offered real advantages: 13 rounds versus 6 in a revolver, 9mm compatibility with German ammunition, flatter profile. For concealment, greater sustained fire before reload. An agent operating alone behind enemy lines could scavenge ammunition from captured German stocks. Compared with the Colt M1911, the high power carried nearly double the ammunition in a lighter platform. Many agents cached pistols upon landing to avoid detection. Some of those later armed local resistance fighters, but distribution was situational, not systematic mass issue. British Army resistance. The British Regular Army remained conservative about pistols well into the post-war period. Military leadership long believed revolvers were more robust and more accurate under service conditions. Britain did not officially adopt the high power until 1954, nearly a decade after the war ended. This reluctance was institutional inertia, not documented rejection of the design's effectiveness. Specialized units adopted it enthusiastically. The Special Air Service used it from World War II through the early 1990s. British airborne forces carried Inglis high powers during Operation Varsity, the Rhine crossing in March 1945. Units that needed practical sidearms embraced it. Units that viewed pistols as secondary equipment did not prioritize modernization. Global influence. After the war, the high power spread globally. Adopted by more than 50 armies across 93 countries, it became one of the most widely issued military pistols of the 20th century. The British L9A1 served until 2013. Canada retained theirs until 2024. Siver's double-column magazine concept became standard. Modern service pistols, such as the Beretta 92, CZ75, Sig Sauer P226, and Glock 17, all follow the high-capacity template, first proven viable in the P35. Browning's short recoil tilting barrel system became the dominant operating principle in modern semi-automatic pistols. Original production ended in 2018, closing one of the longest continuous handgun runs in history. A redesigned variant returned in 2022. Conclusion. The high power was not useless. It was not uniquely demanded by the French resistance in documented supply records. What it demonstrably was, the first successful high-capacity military pistol, a design completed across continents under wartime pressure, a weapon manufactured by both Axis and Allied factories, a sidearm trusted by special operations forces, a mechanical template that shaped nearly every modern combat handgun. Browning did not live to see it finished. Sive completed it. Belgian workers built it under occupation. Canadian factories reproduced it for Allied use. British commandos carried it in clandestine operations. Its legacy is not myth. It is documented history,